turn to me and obey my commands, then even if your exiled people are at the furthest of the exile, and after they return, God speaks through prophets like Isaiah, Ezekiel, Zechariah, and Malachi to tell the people of something better coming in the future. God didn't bring them back to the land of Israel. No, God was promising something better. Life under God's future blessings promised a successful Jerusalem, a king in the line of David ruling once again, Israel ruling over other nations, and an abundance of food and crops. And it would happen on a day called the Day of the Lord. And on this day, God would bring judgment over Israel's enemies who'd led them into exile. The question is, now that God has forgiven Israel's sin, restored them to the land and fellowship with him, and offering this amazing future under him, will they continue living following him? Will they walk in the same direction, fearing the Lord as the beginning of all wisdom? Will they obey God's law and be faithful, loving him with their whole hearts and obeying his precepts? Well, sadly, there wasn't much change in the Israelites' lives. Ezra and Nehemiah show that the people had forgotten God's instructions to be holy, to be different from the other nations, and they'd intermarried with foreigners, bringing their gods into their homes. The priests and the Levites were quick to abandon their duties. Leaders in Jerusalem were corrupt. The people were working on the Sabbath. And in Malachi, we see that the people weren't giving the first 10% as a tithe to God. Men were unfaithful and divorcing their wives, and people were being tempted to just live as they please because following God's commandments seemed to offer no tangible advantage. So the Old Testament period ends with the city being rebuilt, the temple being rebuilt, but not really as good as it used to be, kind of like when you grow up and you go back to a Hungry Jack's playground and you realise it's not as great as you remember when you were a little kid. The Old Testament ends with no king, and it ends with Israel remaining under